Welcome to the introduction to the Sentimetric Heatmap, a new way to look at your organisation. First, let's just start with this one realisation. Organisations are a matrix of relationships. People do not work in a hierarchy. Now, wouldn't it be useful if we could see that matrix of relationships in a pictorial view, using a graduated scale that would show us the health of the way that they were working? Each row can show us how the team sees the health of the workflow of the other teams that they're working with. And using a graduated scale, we can see the hotspots of where there may be any ill health. And if we can look at the health of the work that's occurring between these teams, we can also look at the health of their relationships, how they get along. If we can see this heat map, this graduated scale of the health of the relationships for one team, then we can see it for all of the teams in our organisations. We can have a heat map for all of the teams, looking at how they see the health of the workflow and the health of the relationships with each of the teams that they work with. And when we look at these heat maps, we can start to see some patterns emerging. For instance, here we can see that operations and production have a relatively unhealthy relationship with both sales and marketing. But the relationships with production and operations, with themselves and with management, is very healthy. The question there becomes, what is the cause of the ill health? So if we look at the rows in the heat maps, we can see how each team perceives the health of the workflow and the health of the relationships with the other teams in the business unit. But if we look down the column, we see it from another angle. We can look at the way that the teams are perceived by each of the others in the business unit. So reading down the column, in this example, the sales team has some real issues in relationships within the business unit. Now, if we can take this view of the health of workflow and the health of relationships within the teams within our business unit, we can then step across and we can talk to the teams within our clients, and we can ask them how they see the health of the workflow and the health of the relationships. So looking at this client, we see hotspots that client team 1 has with the management in the health of their workflow. And there are some real issues that the client teams 1 and 2 have with operations, production, management and marketing. And we can then look the other way in our value chain, and we can ask the suppliers how they see workflow and relationships. And again, we can see patterns coming out in the heat map. Now, what we've been looking at so far is the view in to our business teams. But we can also look the other way. We can ask the teams to look out and tell us how they think the health of the workflow and the relationships that they have with both their client and supplier teams. It gives us a 360 view across the value chain. So we can see the business unit team's perception of the client teams and also of the supplier teams. But there's more. If we take this graduated heat map approach to looking at the way that people are managed, the way that work is managed, and the health of the leaders in the organisation, we end up with a 360 view of the health of the relationships across the value chain. We can see the health of people and work management and the health of the leadership all in one infographic report. So, what would your organisation look like in this infographic? And what would your people say if you asked them the same questions? To find out more, visit www.bizhealthcheck.biz and register your interest today to improve the effectiveness of your organisation.